Greetings, friends and family, and welcome to another episode of Baba Talks. I know it's been a while since I did a Baba Talks because I've been putting out so many of the stories for all of you to enjoy, but I'm going to start doing a few more Baba Talks. Those of you who've been with me a while, you know the Baba Talks are my opportunity to sort of speak off the cuff and not have anything that's totally prepared. So, in this Baba Talks, there's an issue I want to address. And let me start out by telling you a little bit of history of me. When I was young, very young, a child, at one point in my childhood, we lived in Germany, Berlin to be exact. And there's a memory that stands out in my mind that's more poignant than almost any other memory. My mother got us on a train to go to Poland. And I remember hours and hours and hours. At least that's what it felt like of being on this plane because I was that child. Are we there yet? I was that child. So we are taking this train, and what I didn't know at the time, being a child, was my mother was taking us to Auschwitz concentration camp, which was very important to her. And after hours of riding the train, we get to Auschwitz. And some of it is a little fuzzy in my mind at this point. Stay on this earth long enough and you'll have the same issues. But some of the things that are vibrant as far as memories that stand out more than anything else, the images, the stories, the people I met there, and the pictures that were on some of the walls, the emaciated bodies of the Jewish people who were held in Auschwitz, the piled up pictures of piled up dead bodies. And at the time, I didn't understand why my mother wanted to take us there. My mother's no longer with us, so now this is a conversation, one of those conversations I would love to have with her, but she's no longer with us. May her soul rest in peace. But I didn't quite understand at the time why we went. And honestly, it was horrifying. It was a memory in my life that stands out more than most things. Those of you who've read my book, Road of Ash and Dust, you know that my grandmother shared stories with me when I was growing up about lynchings in our family. I would put this story of visiting Auschwitz, of the experience of hearing people's stories while in Germany, I would put it on par with the way my grandmother's stories affected me about lynchings within our family. So here's why I'm saying this. That was important to my mother, and over the decades, I'm one of the most blessed beings on the planet. I get to travel the world doing my craft, doing what I do. But one of the things I always do when I travel, whether it's domestic or internationally, is I always try to find the local locations where to honor those who have been sacrificed or sacrificed their lives for the well-being of others. I've always done that. And I think that's one of the reasons why my mother had us visit Auschwitz, is because no matter what your perception is about what happened to the Jewish people during that period of time, there was still this idea that those lives were sacrificed, and lives that are sacrificed should never be sacrificed without us remembering. So memory is very important. So I've come to this conclusion over all these years of traveling to all of these different places over the world, that there is some sort of a disconnect. Because this summer, I'll just give you this. This summer, while my wife and I were traveling across the country, we stopped in Okima, Arkansas. Okima is the place of a very infamous lynching of a woman and her 12-year-old son, Laura Nelson and LD Nelson. You can look this up on the internet. And if you want, I'll leave a link in the description to maybe Wikipedia or something. You can look it up. But when we were on the road, it was paramount to me to find the location of this lynching and to visit it, because it's one of those images, and if you've never seen it, I'm going to warn you in advance. It's a difficult image to process. It never leaves your mind. And I saw this image as a child. In fact, when I saw the image, this is the irony of this. When I saw the image, it was a postcard. It was a postcard that had been taken at a photo that had been taken at the time of the lynching that was made into a postcard. And that was when I was young, maybe I was like 9 or 10. And I started learning that it was a common thing to take pictures of lynchings, make them into postcards, and that people shared them across the country to family members. Okay, but that's not my point. I mean, I could go into the weeds on this and talk about this, but here's the point I want to make. I visited my wife and I found the bridge where Laura Nelson and L.D. Nelson, her son, were hung, and spent a few minutes there. It's been paved over. It doesn't look anything like it looked. In fact, I had to know the coordinates in order to find it in Okema, or they call it Okemah. Local people call it Okemah, O-K-E-M-A-H, Arkansas. But when I came back and I'm sharing my experiences of my travels, I would tell people about visiting the site of Laura and L.D. Nelson's lynching, and people would, almost down to the number would say, why would you do that? Why would you subject yourself to such a thing? And why would you induce trauma on yourself? And I found it curious because anytime I've shared my story about my mother taking us to Auschwitz, my mother has always been, whenever people respond to it, it has always been in heroic terms. It has always been, your mother was brave, your mother was courageous, your mother had a lot of foresight, your mother had a lot of wisdom in sharing that with you. But never ever, when I tell the story of visiting Auschwitz as a child, does anyone say, why would your mother do that to you? No one ever asked me about my mother inflicting trauma on me. They don't blame her for inflicting trauma. There's some sort of a disconnect, and I'm not sure what it is. There are greater minds than mine that can answer this question and figure it out. But to me, honoring anyone who has had their life taken from them, it just seems something natural to me. And maybe it's because of the way I was reared. Maybe it's because of the way I was brought up. Maybe that's one of the differences is in our conditioning. I'm not sure. But it is troubling that we can empathize with some and not others, or that we can see some and not others. I wish I had the answer to this. I really do. But during the Baba Talks, I always just want to share what's on my heart and what's in my head with you and let you know things that are coming up. So this is something that's been troubling me a little bit. Not a lot. I'm not losing sleep over it or anything. But over my life, I have noticed this disconnect in a number of things. For example, when I was growing up in Texas, I remember Texas history. Maybe it was about the 7th grade. I think it was about the 7th grade. It had to be the 7th grade. But we read Anne Frank. It was a part of our required reading. We had discussions about Anne Frank. And we had some intense discussions. And because I had lived in Germany and because I had visited those locations, I was able to contribute a little bit of my experiences. But whenever we had those discussions, there was always attached to the discussion the idea of memory, never forgetting, that we study this so that we don't repeat the past. In my Texas history when I was growing up, we had almost no discussions about slavery. We had very few discussions about the brutality. Well, we didn't have any discussions about the brutality of it. In fact, one of the things that stands out in my mind most about learning about the period of slavery is the term carpetbaggers. And it's funny because, well, you probably won't think this is funny, and I mean it in a pejorative way, or I don't mean it in a pejorative way. But what's funny is I remember learning, it is very clear in my mind about how Northerners came down and took advantage of the South at the loss of the war and bought up businesses and basically bankrupt the South. That's the type of thing I was learning when I was very young. Fortunately, I had a family that balanced out what I was learning. But back to the idea that we were learning about Anne Frank, it was important. And at that time, I knew the importance of it. But even as a child, I could not understand where the disconnect occurred in people being able to see how important Anne Frank is, but not being able to relate the importance of the stories of the people who were enslaved. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. And maybe you can leave some words in the comment, share some of your wisdom with me so that I can gain a better understanding, because I'm always seeking to understand. I'm just going to share this blurred image with you. I'm going to blur it out because I don't know who is viewing this, but this is the image of Lauren L.D. Nelson being hung on the bridge in Okima. And I blurred it out, but if you want to find it, there's a link in the description. But I put this up here because I want us to be able to share truth. I want us to be able to remember from our past so that we don't repeat it. And hopefully this this Baba Talks won't get banned by YouTube because I put this image here. But it's important for me to share. And you can look at the image and you can kind of make out what it is that you're looking at, even though it's a little blurred. Okay, now moving on, because I don't want to keep my Baba Talks very long. I always want to keep them a little short. I've been posting stories, and one of my goals, it's a legacy thing for me. One of my goals is to put stories out that I've been sharing over the decades in my profession and just give people an opportunity to sink in and to grasp and to ruminate, if you will, think on the stories. Because it may not be a lot of people who enjoy this, but there are a lot of people who meditate through stories, who think on stories, who grow through stories. Well, most of us grow through stories. So I'm going to continue doing that. But in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start publishing what I call dilemma tales. Dilemma tales are problem-solving tales. The ones that I'm going to be doing are traditionally out of Africa. But I want to encourage you to, when I publish these dilemma tales, to contribute in the comment section how you would solve the dilemma. And I think I'll publish them one every couple of days or something like that for all of you. You'll enjoy them. I enjoy dilemma tales. When I'm working in classrooms, children beg me for dilemma tales because they like to debate and argue over how they would solve the problem or what they would do differently. So dilemma tales are an important part of many cultures. So I'll be sharing those in the next few days. And please leave your comments of your wisdom in the comment section. Now, there's one more thing before I let you go. The other thing that I want to share before we close out, and this is important to me. Part of what I'm doing is not so much for, how would you say, to get as many subscribers as possible. I'd love that. But part of what I'm doing, it's a legacy project for me. And whether I get subscribers or not, it doesn't matter as much to me. Because I think that YouTube serves a purpose beyond monetization, beyond what you can get from it or what it can give you. It serves another purpose. And I think legacy is very important. And for that reason, I'm going to create an archives on my site. And a playlist. We'll call the playlist archives. Well, I know I'm not being very creative, but we'll call the playlist archives. And what I'll start doing is I have a few hundred VHS tapes. Yeah, I'm old school. And I've been digitizing these VHS tapes. So some of them are African drum and dance, things that happen here in Southern California and other places. I got videos from like the 80s in different parts of the world, videos from when I've started traveling that, well, we didn't have digitization at the time, so it's on VHS tapes. But I'm transferring a lot of those, and I'll just start putting those up. If you want, enjoy those. But for me, the main purpose of that is it's archival footage. I don't remember the names of everyone in the videos, so maybe some of you can reach out to me If you see images of people in the video, blue dress, give me the name. And the last thing that was going to be the last thing, but something else popped into my mind. The last thing is this. The archival project is important, right? And I'm not doing that for subs or anything like that. I'm doing that so that the community can have access to something that I have. Because over time, what I've noticed is that many of our elders pass, and a lot of what they possess ends up in the trash heap. This is a way for me to keep those things out of the trash heap. So I'm going to go and get some of these other videos posted. And if you have any questions, I wish I could remember the elder who called me about the Juneteenth, the big lie video. I was called by an elder whose grandfather fought in the Civil War, and we had a conversation. And it was one of the most incredible conversations I've had in a long time. I wish I could remember your name. And if you want to reach out to me again, reach out to me again, because I really enjoyed talking to you, and I would enjoy talking to you again. Well, listening to you again. The Juneteenth Big Lie video, it took off. It was, I think it's at 16,000 views, something crazy like that, and it got there fast. And YouTube is saying, publish more of these, do more of this, more people will come. But I'm not chasing subs. I want those people who want to be here to be here. People like the elder who called me and wanted to have a conversation about his great-grandfather in the Civil War. That's who I publish for. I publish for future generations who are going to look at this stuff when I'm no longer here. That's who I publish for. And if it catches on with people who understand the reason for this and understand legacy, then wonderful. But if not, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm going to sign off. And until our paths cross again, which I'm fond of reminding everyone, hopefully soon, Doni Doni, Kunoni Benyagada.